forward. To choose from the Atlantic Area Bird List, which comprises just under 400 kinds, 20 species that are the best known and the most popular among bird students, be they beginners or top liners, is obviously a difficult, if not impossible, undertaking. Well, that's what I've been asked to do, and my best effort at compiling such appears below. In the first place, the birds that are best known are by no means the most popular. For instance, the ubiquitous English sparrow, starling, and crow are far from being favorites. Furthermore, I am far from being unmindful of the fact that my own personal choices of the 20 that are eligible for a place in such a group and the order they are being given may well differ markedly from that which my respective readers may consider would be more justifiable or appropriate. In this connection, any comments or criticisms will be received with interest from those who may care to submit any such. Robin. As is generally known, this is one of our most common summer birds, with stragglers occurring regularly in winter, and I believe there are few, if any, bird lovers who will disagree with me for placing it at the top of this list. Characterized by its song, which is heard more or less throughout the daylight hours, its twilight renditions, early morning and evening, are decidedly the most delightful and impressive. In summer, their food, which consists mainly of earthworms, insects of many kinds, and fruit, is plentiful, but in winter it is a different matter. Their main diet, then, is made up of the frozen berries that still cling to the hawthorns, roses, and other deciduous growth, and it is probable that some of them do not survive the rigors of a severe Nova Scotia winter. A brief explanation concerning robins in winter might be appropriate here, for I am often asked if seeing one of them in winter is an indication of an early spring or perhaps an indication that a mild winter is in the offing. A robin in winter foretells neither. The accepted explanation is this: these birds nest as far north as the limit of tree growth. Obviously their numbers are relatively small. With the approach of winter, which is felt there by late in August, these northerners begin their southward trek, and by the time they reach Nova Scotia, they will have completed their migratory flight. In other words, they will have converted approximately the same distance that our summer robins will have covered by the time they have reached their wintering grounds in the southern United States. Many bird species raise but one brood a year, but robins, if successful, normally raise 3. Oh yeah. Tree swallow. Of the 4 kinds of swallows which occur regularly in Nova Scotia, this one, with its pure white breast and glossy greenish-blue back, is the best known to most of us. It returns from the south during the latter days of April and remains in close proximity to its nesting site in our garden until the early days of July, by which time its domestic responsibilities for the year will have ended. Though swallows do not sing in the manner that many birds do, their musical twitterings as they cavort low overhead is decidedly pleasing. For nesting in their natural surroundings, this bird depends entirely upon cavities in trees or posts. But when such are not available or have already been taken over by English sparrows or starlings, tree swallows will readily use a man-made nest box. If undertaking the construction of such a box, it is important to give special attention to the size and shape of the entrance hole. This should be oval-shaped with the vertical measurement exactly 15/16 of an inch. This is important because the envious and pugnacious English sparrows will find it practically impossible to enter a hole of that dimension, while the more streamlined swallows can go in quite easily. The horizontal measurement is not so important. 2.5 to 3 inches is suggested, thus making it possible for more than one little head to protrude at feeding time. Swallows live entirely upon winged insects, which they capture in flight. Obviously, they are desirable birds to have about one's premises. Black-capped chickadee. These birds are resident in Nova Scotia throughout the year, but are most commonly seen enjoyed as they patronize our feeding grounds, or patronize, I don't know. As they patronize our feeding stations in winter. Its regular song, if it is limited vocal efforts, okay. These birds are resident in Nova Scotia throughout the year. Why is this funny? Okay. These birds are resident in Nova Scotia throughout the year, but are most commonly seen and enjoyed as they patronize our feeding stations in winter. Its regular song... Okay, fuck. Oh, this is hard. It's... Okay. It's... Fuck. Its regular song... Its regular song, if its limited vocal efforts might be called a song, consists of a cheery note which clearly enunciates the bird's name, Chickadee, but it also has another call, which is more commonly heard in the spring, by which it seems to say, Phoebe. This note is a sweet two-tone whistle which is uttered slowly, and I think it goes, shh, shh, basically. I don't know. If I'm wrong, then fuck it. The chickadees' food preferences are rather varied. When on their own, they naturally consume quantities of the eggs and larvae of insects which they glean from the branches of trees. But at food trays in winter, a marked preference is noted for such items as suet, peanut butter, and sunflower seeds, while so engaged in their aerobatic performances are a delight to all of us. Chickadees nest in cavities and rotten stumps. If the wood is sufficiently decayed, the holes will be... Oh, shit. Fucking Jesus. If the wood is sufficiently decayed, the holes will be excavated by their own tiny bills. Some of us are fortunate in having a pair of these delightful creatures. Okay, fuck. Shit. Some of us are fortunate in having a pair of these delightful creatures choose a swallow nest box in our garden, in which to raise their rather large family of 6 to 8 youngsters, but normally they resort to woodland areas at nesting time. Yellow Warbler. Look for the return of this ray of sunshine about the middle of May. Rather than being a woodland bird, it is Look for the return of this ray of sunshine about the middle of May. Rather than being a woodland bird, it is one which seems to prefer cultivated gardens where rose bushes and other ornamental plants flourish. Its song is a simple sweet trill, pleasing to the ear but not outstanding. Its food consists largely of small caterpillars, especially those which it finds on rose bushes. The plumage of the male is somewhat brighter than that of its mate, but as the name suggests, both are yellow. The male chooses the site for the nest, and having done so, is content to permit the female to do all the work of construction. Much cotton wool, when available, is woven into the structure, for which reason it is an excellent idea to tack a wad of it to a post or other conspicuous spot in the garden. The nest is at low elevations. Through the medium of bird banding, we have learned that the male yellow warbler returns to the nest site of the previous year, choosing a new mate when nesting begins. Alright. Song Sparrow. This is one of our most common summer birds, whose lovely song is heard from early in March till well on into summer. It is as much at home about our dooryards and orchards as it is in areas far removed from habitation. In summer, its food consists very largely of insects, but in autumn, weed seeds make up a large part of its diet. Nesting begins early, and if successful, 2 or even 3 broods will be raised. The nest is usually on the ground, but not infrequently in thick shrubbery, always at low elevations. A strange characteristic of this bird is its invariable habit of stopping in the middle of bathing to scratch one or both ears, not only once but several times. I have never known it to fail. A bird of somber colors, the song sparrow is the general favorite with all who know it. Blue jay. Though blue jays are permanent residents in Nova Scotia, they are seen much more commonly by most of us during the lean months of winter. This is because their food supply in their natural woodland haunts dwindles as cold weather approaches, causing them to wander further afield. Those of us who maintain winter feeding stations for the feathered wayfarers are thrilled by the appearance of these gorgeous colored birds, which despite their greedy and saucy mannerisms are welcome patrons about our homes at such close range. Blue jays are decidedly omnivorous in their feeding. I have found that one of the most satisfactory food items to attract them is corn on the cob. They nest in May, usually in well-wooded areas. The nest is wholly constructed of small twigs with a lining of fine rootlets, and the speckled greenish-blue eggs range in the number from 3 to 6. In addition to their familiar J, 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 they have quite a variety of calls, some of which are most pleasing to hear, and unless the bird was actually seen at such times, its identity could be quite puzzling. White-throated sparrow. Though not well known by amateur bird students when seen in its natural woodland haunts, hence not a popular species, the whitethroat is being given a place in this restricted group of birds wholly because of its song. It is probably true that all of the bird songs heard in our northern woodlands, none is more widely known than the white-throated sparrows, and yet how relatively few people there are who, while listening intently, know the name of the performer. The song of this bird might be described as sweet and plaintive. Perhaps to some it has a touch of melancholy. The scale is highly variable, but usually begins with 2 long flute-like notes, followed by a series of clear whistled cadences, tremulous and vibrating, which gradually weaken at the end. Of several, perhaps, euphonious translations of its song, the most fitting one seems to be, "I love Canada, Canada, Canada," from which the bird is colloquially known to some as the Canada bird. Other listeners, influenced by another interpretation of the song, and of course not knowing its real name, call it Old Sam Peabody. In summer, its food is made up largely of insects, but stragglers that winter here are wholly dependent upon nature's store of seeds. Loon. There's no outdoorsman worthy of the title who has not at some time in his travels encountered a pair of loons on one of our island lakes and not been impressed by their striking appearance and characteristic behavior. Though the loon is a migratory species, many of them spend the winter offshore along our coast. These are probably the individuals which are the first to return to the lakes for nesting, and which are known to time their arrival so accurately as to be on hand as soon as the first stretch of open water appears after the spring breakup in early April. Motivated by reasons of better security from their enemies, islands are chosen for nest sites, and because the bird's propellers are placed so far aft as to render it capable of taking off from land, the nest is located close to the water's edge in order to facilitate escape if attacked while brooding. 2, rarely 3, eggs complete the set. They are dark brown in color and are sometimes laid on the bare sand, but usually a brood nest composed of coarse reeds is constructed. The young, when hatched, are covered with black down, except for a small white patch on the breast, and leave the nest soon after hatching. Both parents share the responsibility of their survival. Loons are protected by both federal and provincial laws throughout the year. Herring gull. Of the 14 varieties of gull which are known to occur in Nova Scotia, this one is by far the most common. It takes about 4 years for it to acquire adult plumage, which is characterized by pale bluish-gray on the back and upper wing surfaces with black wingtips. The rest of its plumage is white. The first-year birds are dark gray, becoming lighter during the interim to maturity. This will explain why gulls appear in so many different color phases. The food of this bird varies greatly, though it probably depends largely upon many types of marine life, fishes, clams, etc. It often comes inland, where it devours quantity of grasshoppers and other destructive insects, field mice, earthworms, and small fruits such as blueberries. And one was even seen in the act of killing a large house rat which it subdued with considerable difficulty. These birds breed in colonies, the nest being usually placed on the ground but often in spruce trees at low elevations. 3 mottled eggs are laid, and if these are destroyed, a second and even third attempt will be made to raise a brood. Because of their abundance, their potential for damage or benefit to man's economy is substantial. On the credit side of the ledger should be added their aesthetic value, for our shores would be far less attractive were these graceful creatures not present. Gulls are classed as non-game birds and as such are protected by law at all times. Canada Goose. Most of my readers will agree that this noble bird deserves a place on this list. Though most frequently seen in parts of the province as migrating flocks pass high overhead in their cleverly devised V formation during spring and fall, there's a large concentration of Canada geese which has been wintering at Port Joli and adjacent waters along the border of Queen's Shelburne counties since time immemorial. Eelgrass, which flourishes there luxuriantly, is the food that attracts them. There they begin to gather early in September on the return from their northern nesting grounds. During recent years, a few of these fine birds have been bred in captivity in Nova Scotia and later released with the idea of establishing a local breeding population. How well this venture will succeed, time alone will tell. They nest on the ground always near water, and the eggs vary in number from 4 to 6. One of the characteristics of the gander is the devotion and solicitude he displays throughout the nesting period for the welfare of his family. These birds remain mated for life, and some tragic stories are told of pairs that have been broken forcibly. Their food consists of marine life, grass, and clover roots, with an assortment of grain and corn, which latter they eagerly take when available. It is a memorable and thrilling experience to watch a flock from a blind at close range as they come to decoys to alight. For despite their heavy bodies, they are able to maneuver their powerful pinions in such a manner as to permit a descent as slow as though their weight was that of a mere thistledown. And that concludes part 1 of this book. Thanks for listening and/or watching. I'll see you next time.